Felicitations Adventures. Welcome to Over the Table. I'm Taylor Felicity, and I have scoured the internet, but mostly Reddit, for stories about TTRPGs for us to provide our unsolicited opinions, advice, and commentary. Today I'm here with Colin and Fuzka, and we are talking about table manners. We're talking about etiquette at the TTRPG table, which I think is going to be really interesting because I think it's something that's not a lot of tables don't talk about up front, and a lot of people have really different expectations of what they want at a TTRPG table, what they don't like, pet peeves, all this different stuff. So I've got a bunch of stories that are about all of that. But before we get into those, I'm going to throw it over to my guests to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about their history with TTRPGs, their experience, all of that kind of stuff. And we'll start with Colin.
Hello, my name is Colin. I use they and he pronouns. I am the GM and creative director for The Roll Report, available where you find your podcasts. I have been playing games and telling stories as long as I've been alive, which is from years. I just had a birthday, so I get to make that a longer from.
Oh, happy birthday!
Thank you. Yeah, and in the last 4.5 years, like many of us, I have taken that harder pivot and have been running a million games and playing as many as I can get my hands on. And I was brought up with very good table manners when it comes to actually eating dinner. Clearly that has applications to D&D table manners and other RPG table manners. So, and I am so delighted to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. I'm glad to have you back on. This will be a little less fraught than the last time you were on when we played Tangled Blessings. Yeah. We don't have to hate each other in character. So amazing. That'll be good. Fuzka, I'll throw it over to you to introduce yourself and talk about your history with TTRPGs.
Sure. I'm Fuz. I run my own TTRPG really Twitch channel here with a bunch of my friends and family. I got into it when I was in oh my god, I think fourth grade or something, because my cousins and my brothers were like, "Do you like D&D? It's a great time. Come hang out." So I got into it super young. We took a huge break from it during I think 4 and 3.5 and such. And then we got super back into it just before the pandemic. And now we've kind of hit what we jokingly call our TTRPG ho phase, where we're trying out as many systems as we can.
Yes.
We're having a good time.
Flood it up with RPGs.
We're going. So we are doing a bunch of different ones lately. We've been testing some things out. Our next one we just finished our recruiting for is for Pathfinder. And then I want to try the Tales of Xadia one in early next year. So we're just kind of trying a bunch of things out right now. I will say that in terms of table manners, I told Felicity this before we went live, and I was like, I'm scared I'm going to be bad, because I think all my answers are going to be go talk to each other. Just have a conversation. Go talk to each other. That's it. And yeah, so I'm going to hopefully vary my answers, maybe find synonyms for all the words I used in that sentence. But that's sort of my background.
Yeah, it's the root of a lot of problems, is a failure to communicate or not being very good at communicating. So I think that'll come up a lot. And I am Taylor Felicity. I use she, her pronouns. And I guess if you've been watching my streams for a while, I play a bunch of different TTRPGs as well. Most of these stories, I think maybe all of them, are D&D, just because that's mostly what people are talking about on Reddit. But I play actually not that much D&D. This is Over the Table is the main time on my channel I talk about D&D. If you are watching live, there are some fun things that you can do to interact with the channel. One of the things is if enough people within a certain amount of time type boo or cheer or yay, I think it's 5 people within 5 minutes, it'll automatically trigger a cheering sound effect or a booing sound effect. So if there's somebody that's in one of these stories that you're this person sucks, you can boo. If everybody in chat gets together, you can boo. If you like what someone's doing, you can cheer. And also, if you have channel points, which is Twitch's free currency that you get just for watching streams, and you don't want to wait for other people, you can also redeem channel points to just boo or cheer on your own without waiting for anybody else. And then there's also a red flag alert. So if during the story you're like, oh, the thing this person is doing or saying is a red flag, you can use channel points to redeem that. I'll do it now just so you can see what it looks like. A little red flag pops up. And then also, I can't remember if I need an exclamation point or not. I think if you just type, if you're a subscriber, so if you pay Twitch to not have ads on my channel specifically, if you type red flag, it should work. But for some reason, it doesn't work for me. So I always forget.
Oh, no.
Even though I'm counted as a subscriber, for some reason my bot doesn't recognize me doing that. Oh, maybe it has to be one word. Let me try. If this doesn't work, then it just doesn't work for me. Whatever. if you're a subscriber, I think it'll work for you. I think that's everything I have to go over before we actually start going over these stories. So I am going to start us off with our first one, which this is from r/D&D. And just hits a lot of the table manners issues just in one post. So there's a lot. There's a lot going on in this one. I think GMs will recognize a lot of these issues. The title for the story is "How Do People Actually Manage to Play This Game?"
Wow.
I've been DMing for like 3 years now, and the games themselves have been amazing. What has been less than amazing is literally everything else surrounding it. It's genuinely so upsetting and frustrating to me because I love this game so much. Scheduling is a nightmare, but that's a given. In both my groups, I've had to deal with players who are completely unmotivated to do anything besides show up. People show up tired and want to leave after like 2 hours of game time without giving anyone a heads up. And like, I know this is a meme in the D&D community to have people cancel on short notice, but it's genuinely driving me completely nuts. Like, I prep, deep clean my apartment, get excited, and someone texts me an hour before about a situation that was apparent for days. So we have to cancel because we can't really do a big important boss fight with 3 people. And usually the excuses are valid enough that I don't even feel like I'm allowed to get upset. I don't feel like a DM. I feel like a weird mix between a parent and an admin that has to track everyone's schedule and send them daily reminders about their homework. Whenever there's an out-of-game issue, I'm the one who has to deal with everything, even the most mundane shit like coordinating lunch because no one thinks about it. I've tried open and honest communication. I've tried delegating. It doesn't work. Maybe I didn't try hard enough. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. I feel like there are groups where their stuff is just so seamless, like people just playing once a week or at least once a month with no issue. How do y'all do this? Or is this just my skewed perception? My playstyle is very story-focused, roleplay heavy, comedy-ish stuff, so I actually want all my players to be there, and they do such a great job of inhabiting my world and doing their thing. I don't really want to do the whoever shows up thing, where I feel like no one can really progress their storylines. I have 4 PCs at the moment, which seems like a good number, but I don't know. Is this stuff easier with fewer players? But I don't want to kick anyone out. No idea how to deal with this frustration. Should I just relax?
Woof.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
That's a whole lot.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm whoever posted that, if you are listening, I'm sorry that's what you're dealing with. That sounds super frustrating.
Yeah.
For real.
The definition of frustrating for sure.
Yeah.
And they've tried communicating, Foos, so you...
Yeah, I was like, okay, we're cross that bridge, so we're we don't want to say just talk.
First box is ticked.
Although, to be honest, there are other things I think, obviously, you could bring up in this situation. But I also want to start with saying, I absolutely know the frustration of in-person D&D being canceled is so much worse than the digital, because if you're in person, exactly as they're saying, they're deep cleaning, there's a lot of stuff that you don't really know what's going on, because likely whatever table you're at is not the D&D table all the time, right? So like they're setting up for you to be there, whether that's just that room that you're in or like even whatever parking situation. Like there's a lot that kind of goes into hosting the physical game. So that can be so frustrating if it's an hour ahead and you're like, I have done everything I need to. Awesome. So like that is awful, and I'm so sorry. I think I've only ever had that like once or twice in person. But digital, it's like, okay, well that sucks. I guess I'll stay in my pajamas. You know,
Yeah.
like no one cares.
My pants are already off. This is fine, you know.
Exactly. Carry on
I'll
with
play
the day's
Baldur's
routine.
Gate.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
But like truly, oh sorry, go ahead. After you.
No, please finish. It's all good. I wasn't sure if that was a natural break or if there was a further thought there. But yeah, go for it.
Well, mine is just in reference to the idea of talking, just because if it seems as though obviously they are having real, life things coming up and whatever that might be, I think a scheduling either shift or an understanding that maybe this unfortunately isn't going to be possible,
Yeah.
that I think
Yeah.
as much as it is painful, it should also be an open conversation, because if things are getting forced, at least one person's not having a good time, right?
Yeah.
Like, and in this case it's
Agreed.
the DM, which I think is
Which
sucks,
is the important
right?
one.
Yeah, which
An
is the
important one.
important one. I mean,
Everybody's important.
like
Yeah.
everyone's important. Exactly, I agree. Everyone's
Yeah.
important here, but at the same time, I think it's anytime it feels like you're dragging people along, no matter what that is, and especially in a collaborative environment, that just sullies the
Mhm.
water immediately. So in that case, it might be something where like, all right, look, maybe it's once a month or something. If we really need to like bog it down and make sure that that one day is really good for everyone, of course, emergencies will come up and whatever. But if you're having it less often, I think it's easier for people to shift things around, and say that usual day that you have it on that once a month is borked for whatever reason. Hey, you know what? There's 3 other weeks in that month. So maybe there's another time that still works and you can still kind of get that time in. Obviously, I think everyone would prefer to have it more often, but if it's a weekly frustration, maybe try and bring the frequency down so it's a little easier.
Yeah. I was gonna say I think one thing I want to recognize is like as a DM, you are volunteering to take on, I think, a lot of responsibility for logistical planning,
Yeah.
in a spoken way most of the time.
Yeah.
But when the games that I'm running, I assume that it is largely going to be my responsibility, or in one case, me or my co-DM, to do the schedule, make sure everyone remembers when we're starting. We have now delegated the task of food organization to someone who just like 3 hours before game time pings everybody and is like, here are 8 places we're getting dinner from. Pick one.
Mm-hmm.
But like,
Yeah.
but I expect that a lot of that, and in the case of in-person games, yeah, I want to put in the effort to clean my house up and do all those things. So I
Yeah.
think I just want to acknowledge that like by DMing, you may have volunteered yourself for more responsibility than you initially thought. That does not excuse your player's behavior. And I think what I would say to that is like, I agree. Like communication has been tried. Many things have been tried. Maybe this is not the right group for the story you want to tell, or like you're saying, like what can you do to regulate the schedule? Okay, people, we're doing every first and third Wednesday of the month. Clear your first and third Wednesday of the month. And as most polyamorous people know, Google Calendar is our best friend.
Google calendars
or other calendar.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
like I am deeply sympathetic, and this sounds like a very difficult thing, and I guess my and players, if those players of this person ever like see this or read this, like, I don't know, don't be rude. You're being kind of rude.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's where I'm at. Like this seems like this DM is putting in a whole lot of effort to craft the story and do this thing, and then people are like, yeah, I don't know, I've been here an hour, I'm tired, I'm gonna bounce. And that's just kind of
Yeah.
rude to like everyone else.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially
I
if it's
didn't even, like,
happening
address that.
consistently. Yeah.
If that's a consistent thing, that's like if
I
your
can't
players are
imagine.
consistently trying to pass out during your game and everyone's spinal declination starts at 90 and just like goes slowly to 180.
Like, yeah,
Maybe you
Yeah.
gotta play earlier in the day too. I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
hand out some caffeine pills
Yeah.
to everybody beforehand.
Yeah.
So I have a D&D game that I've been running for friends and family since 2018. So it's 6 years, I think. And when we started, my sister was one of the players, and kind of because like everybody wanted to play with her. She didn't really know D&D. All of us were pretty new to D&D at that point. Like it's the first game that I ever like DM'd. And she pretty quickly realized that D&D was not really for her. She wasn't super into it, but she didn't like want to quit right away because she liked hanging out with everybody. Like it was like, oh, we're all friends and stuff. And so we would usually play for like maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours in. She would kind of just get up, leave the table, go lay down on the couch. And just like usually about an hour and a half in, she was asleep. And for that game, it was fine because we had a good number of players, and I as a DM am more okay with like if somebody can't make it, we play anyway. Like for the most part, I'll roll with that. But we had it that her character would just wander off and fall asleep as well. So whenever she did that, her character, we were like, yeah, her character's like a stoner, and he just will go fall asleep somewhere. Yeah, so that's how we handled that with, but that's I think we had 6 players. So with 6 players, it's a little easier for someone to fall asleep or leave early. With 4 players, it's like, more of a bummer.
Well, and I'm going to add one thing on that score. Like, honestly, I think 4 is a great number for a party.
Yeah.
It's like, I think that I've started a number of games at 6 and assumed that that 2 people will drop out, and I'm usually right. And then I don't like being right about it, but I am. And and like, so to that last point that they were making, like I think you don't want less than 3, and sure, adding players is always an exponential increase in logistical challenges because scheduling.
Yeah.
But 4 is a really good number, and like, I mean, again, I'm sorry this person's players are being rude. For lack of better words.
It does fully sound like the DM, and most of the time, you want to make sure you're considerate of both sides, but in this case, like, it just seems as though it is a fault, unfortunately, on the players entirely. I don't see them doing anything that sounds, obviously we don't have all the details too, like I don't know how they are in person, and if something like tonally is coming across wrong or whatever that might be, but on paper it just sounds as though this DM is frustrated that they don't get to enjoy this project that they're having with other people, and they're just not reciprocating the effort that this DM is putting into it, which is understandably super frustrating. But I think a conversation of whether it makes sense should be a thing. And then if a different schedule needs to be hashed out.
Have either of you as DMs, or have you been in a game where this happened, where the DM did delegate some of the stuff, like delegates? I know, Colin, you already said the food stuff. You have someone else. Have you ever had a game where somebody's like, oh, I'll like host, but I'm not the DM, or like I'll take over scheduling, but I'm not the DM?
I have had a lot of success, like I said, with like designating the most of my games, at least in person, are every other week, but we just kind of go, great, second and fourth Thursdays, or get one that's like first and third Wednesdays. And at the end of a session, we'll kind of like, everybody will be like, hey, here's what we've got next month, everyone good, in case we need to move it around a little. I think I've been very lucky that people are willing to move around, and we do pretty consistently stick to that. Having said that, so we delegated the food. We were just like, this is one more thing that is just like a little bit too much for us. And in one of the games that I am playing, one of the other players has hosted because she has she is feeling very fancy because she and her partner just got a house, and they're like, want to show it has room for like 6 of us. And this like massive, the DM loves doing like the giant flat screen TV on the table, virtual tabletop kind of approach. So I think it is nice when the DM isn't in charge of 100% of the stuff, and as always, everybody's got to communicate and be like, hey, would you mind taking over this thing, and how about we delegate some of this stuff and come to some agreements. And I think it takes a lot of work off of the DM's shoulders when players are willing to help out.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think the funny thing for me is 100% of my games right now are digital. So it's obviously a different conversation. But because 100% of my games are not only digital, but they're also streamed at the moment.
Yeah.
That's also when people can kind of step up and help, which is great. So like I have a few players who are either like kind of taking care of the raiders when they come in, or like making
Oh,
sure the
nice.
title and the episode number is right. We just recently started doing what are they called? Ooh, the like timestamps. That's what it is. Timestamps. There we go. For like YouTube. So when we update or upload it to
Oh,
YouTube,
yeah.
it'll have the timestamps of like what is going on in the story, so you can like at least kind of get an idea of how that episode's going to go. So someone else is taking care of that. But I think like as a DM, also as a person, I know I just really love multitasking. So I'm happy DMing, producing, chatting in chat, making the music right, whatever it might be, and like that's fine. But yeah, the second any player is like, I'll help with this, it is just like, thank you. Thank you very much. I think in general, I would definitely have trouble bringing it up, and not because I'm like I don't want to ask anyone for help, but because I'm like I'm used to this, so it's fine.
Yeah.
Almost everything I do is super multitasky, so I'm like this is normal for me. But the times when anyone does step up, it is so freaking helpful. So in terms of like delegating, I don't know if there's anything I did actually ask for the timestamps. That I was definitely like, I would love for us to do this. I do not have the bandwidth to do this. Someone else needs to do this, please. And thankfully one of my players stepped up and has been killing it. So
That's awesome.
It's been awesome.
I have tried delegating scheduling before, but I think it just doesn't work. I'm pretty good at scheduling. And so I'm like, and also with like streams and stuff, my schedule's not regular at all. So I'm like, I'll I'll do it. I've had players offer like, do you want me to take over scheduling? And I'm like, no, because it's more work for me to like message you what days or whatever. So it's easier for me to just look at my personal life calendar and stream calendar and figure out when I'm free.
That's the other thing, because I think when you have more, I don't want to say sporadic, but just streams that can kind of happen at whenever everyone's free, that's way harder. Because again, like because all of ours are digital, and we're advertising for stories in our like Discord and such, it's more or less us saying this is when we're good. Are you good too? So it's just like whoever is available will like fill out that roster. So it's less us trying to. My cat is just singing the song with people.
Cute.
But yeah, so for us, I am at least grateful that our scheduling is not super strict or crazy for us, because it's more or less the main crew or whoever wants to DM being like, "This is my schedule. Can you make it?"
That's nice.
Which is nice, yeah. Because even for this one, I know you had to like move some things like around in terms of time and such. Because I was like, that I could do it, but I will die. You shuffled it around, so thank you.
Yeah, luckily these streams are super easy for me to schedule because it's 2 hours, so it's a lot shorter, and I don't do anything on Saturday, so I'm like I can do whatever.
Yeah.
Cool. I think I'll bring it to our next story. This one is from r/RPG horror stories, which is one of my favorite subreddits. And I'm not gonna read the title because the title is the whole thing. The title pretty much says what's up. So the text of this, it has like the oh, I can hear the purring.
Oh wow. Oh, it's a nice bass. Got a good rumble in there. I'm into it.
I was like, is there a plane?
I'm sorry.
My producer mind was like, someone's mic? Like, no, that's a cat.
I forgot.
purring.
My mic is technically clipped to like my shirt down here, so when I pushed it up against it, it was just. I'm sorry.
Cute.
No, it's great. It's some ASMR.
Oh,
I was just like, I've never heard a mic have that kind of error before. So this post has the like text of like what they put on Reddit, and then they put a screenshot of a conversation with a friend. So The text of the post is basically in session 0, my friend of 5+ years started screen sharing a video game on Discord, and I told this is during a game. In the session 0. My friend started screen sharing a video game on Discord, and I told him off for it because I find it rude. We then had the convo in the image. I'm green, he's red, because the names are blurred out. We're really good friends and both want to play, so I'm conflicted about this. So I'll read the back and forth. The back and forth exchange starts with, fuck you. Like, actually don't do that. Which is the DM.
Oh, okay.
Okay, good start. Solid start. Expressing I feelings.
Yeah. Diplomatic, some may say.
Yeah. Then the friend responds, also, yes, I'm gonna play games, but you know I pay more attention to Discord than any game I'm playing, especially since I'm playing games that are boring as fuck. And then they list a bunch of games that they play. The DM says, you're not gonna play games while I'm running a D&D game for you. Mad disrespect, uncool. The friend says, it'd be different if I was playing games of Tarkov because I get invested, but I pay attention to voice chat. Also, if it's my turn, I'm gonna be on my character sheet. You gotta realize, I'm used to a game where combat would take 2 months of weekly sessions to complete. The DM says, if we get a problem like that, I'll time turns. I don't want to run a meat grinder. The friend says, yeah, fair. Again, I don't know what to expect, so I'll adapt shit to what's going on. The DM says, I want to tell a cool story with my friends, so please don't play video games while I'm running a session. And the friend says, like, if I find myself in interactions a lot, I'm not gonna do anything. So...
Okay. Yeah, because I walk around staring at my phone all day, but when someone stops to talk to me, I, kind of keep it off to one side so I'm not looking directly at it.
Yeah.
the fucking gall to share the screen that you're gaming on, right? Like, because if you're gaming and like you're paying enough attention that no one can tell, it's kind of rude, but at least you're still like participating and you're not sucking anyone else out of it. So sure, you know what? Do your thing in your time. That's whatever, I guess. But the idea that you're just like, look, everyone, how much I don't give a shit. It's like,
yeah,
that's wild.
Yeah. Here, we're talking about consent tools and like lines and veils and safety, but hey, check out this apparently super boring game that I'm playing in the background instead of talking about important consent issues and all of us having a good time together. That seems like a good idea.
The whole situation is just outrageous. Because also, right, like again, he described it as boring, right? Which is just like I'm
better
disliking
games,
this session
dude.
0 so much that I'd rather bore myself with something else. And again, share it. Okay, so it's incredible. And then on top of that, the DM starting off with "fuck you."
So funny.
I appreciate that, honestly. I gotta say, like, if you're that tight with someone that you can, in fact, just start a text conversation with "fuck you," don't do that. Like, you're close.
Yeah. Oh my god, I kind of agree, but at the same time, I'm like, even if you are close enough with someone to do that, I think you're starting off on the wrong foot, right? Because like. I think it was like the last like 2 lines they had. I was like, that should have been the start of the conversation. When they said, I want to start, or I want to do something that everyone's involved with and blah, 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 blah. And then they said something else. I'm like, that should have been moved to the top. Everything else should have happened from there. Like, just, this is insane. The more I think about it, the more hilarious it is.
Yeah, I definitely get the feeling these people are younger. I tried to look around at their post history to see like if this person said how old they are, and I don't think they did, but they can't be. I feel like this has to be high school. I hope this is high schoolers, not people in like their 30s being like, I'm gonna stream.
Yeah.
Timberborn is one of. I don't even know the games that they're talking about here.
And again, like that's the biggest thing. Like if you're gonna be faffing around, keeping yourself entertained off screen, which like I get plenty, like I have a tiny fidget, but it doesn't make
Yeah.
noise, and I'm not screen sharing a video game.
You're not like holding it up to the camera, like, hey,
Hey, check out this
Hey,
little
look
thing
at
that pops back and forth. Those ones are awesome. I love the ones that have many different things on different sides.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if we're at the point of giving advice to this person as much as just being like, wow, like your player is super fucking rude.
Yeah.
And I
Super
do
rude.
and like the thing, like I'll adapt to what's coming, and like I don't know what
Yeah.
to expect, so I want to play video games like that. I'm trying to decide what upsets me most about it, and I don't know.
Yeah. So I do have a question for this. Obviously, this is pretty beyond the pale of someone not only playing a video game during the session 0, which I think is pretty egregious, but screen sharing it with the other people in the Discord call. But I do think that there is a question with regards to like table manners or like table etiquette. Like, how much secondary activity is okay at the table? Because I think that does vary a lot from group to group. Like some DMs are like, I'm fine if you're playing like some kind of game as long as it's not like taking up too much of your attention. Like if you got a little puzzle, get like some people play like Candy Crush or whatever while they're at the
Mhm.
table and it helps them focus. Or some people will doodle or have fidget spinners and things like that. But yeah, what is your both of your experience with secondary activity at the table and like your comfort level with it?
I was gonna let you go first.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Go for it.
Okay. I kind of would say I don't care as long as you are in fact still engaged. And I realize that's a bit of a non-answer, but I think at this point, I'm more able to tell, at least in person or with a video game, where I'm like, I don't care if I see you on camera and you're kind of looking down and something's happening. But if someone addresses you in character,
Yeah.
or if it is your turn in combat, you are ready to go. Because I hang out. I know a lot of neurospicy people who need to have something to fidget, need to be drawing, or they check out completely. And this is also true with some of the kids that I've been running games for in the last year and a half.
For
They
sure.
have to have something. And so I mean, like full on kind of playing Candy Crush on your phone, or like playing with a Nintendo Switch, like playing a handheld game. I might be like, hey, can you rein that part in?
Mhm.
Because I don't understand how people can multitask between a handheld game and in-person interaction. I guess I believe it can be done. But yeah, I definitely always have a fidget. I fiddle a lot. I if I was able to draw, I would probably draw. And I think I see all these behaviors and I don't see any problem with them as long as you are, again, A, engaged with what's going on, and B, not distracting anyone else at the table.
Yeah, and I think from my perspective, I feel like I'm initially going to start off with saying I think it's very different in person versus digitally as well.
Yeah.
So like if you're in person and you're fucking around on your phone, that is kind of frustrating to watch and see. But if you're digitally and you're doing it, it's way harder to really kind of notice. And I feel like
Yeah.
it's not as much of a vibe killer as in person. So I think in person is a little bit more sensitive because just the energy of everyone physically around that table. I think in that case, I'm way less tolerant of that. And like, thankfully, I've always had like very engaged players, and I'm very lucky that that's not really something that's come up too many times. But I do know, like in the past with other players, it was just like, are you here? Like, what's going on? You know, and especially
Yeah.
because I always get worried with the idea of someone being like, oh, I'll just like tune in when I'm ready. I like 9
Yeah.
times out of 10, they're not always ready. And part of that is because like someone can be like, oh, this thing I don't know about, let me ask that character about. And that whole
Yeah.
previous scene had nothing to do with them. But now that they're calling them in because they didn't pay attention to that initial, that there's sort of like an awkwardness there as well. So it's like I'm not saying that no one can, of course, but from the experiences that I've had, a lot of times it's not always a seamless transition, and
Mhm.
going to digital at least. I
Yeah.
think for me, it's very much dependent on their performance. If they slow or bog anything down, I'm immediately going to start having a conversation with that person.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that's fair for your players. I don't think that's fair for your DM, whoever is there. And obviously, you don't need to be like a hawk, just only here and nothing else. Like fidgeting's fine. Like if you have to get up, stretch your legs, I understand. That's totally fine.
Yeah.
But if it feels like you're whatever is at the table or whatever everyone else is clearly putting their effort into is secondary to you, I think that just immediately messes with the energy, and I just do not love it. So if you're able to do something and I can't tell, good job. That's fine. But the second I can tell, like, we have to talk, because that's, I don't think that's fair.
Yeah. I think too, one thing about this post specifically that is a red flag to me is I think it's really important for a table to be interacting with each other and be invested in each other, not just scenes they're in, not just like, because sometimes when you're playing D&D, it's like each player is like only interacting with the DM and like only trying to do like their own scenes or their own story, and it just is not that fun in my opinion.
No,
So yeah, and it feels like everyone's just kind of doing their, like, it's like you're supposed to be a group. It depends on the game as well, but yeah, I think if somebody is like, I only care if it's like if I'm in a scene or if it's my turn. Admittedly, it's harder to focus if you're not like in a scene doing something. I totally can understand that.
But we're all telling the story together. It's still important. And what happens to the other characters still should affect your character, even if if your character is not physically present in the scene that is going on, and you need to wait for a minute. That person's probably going to tell you in character what happened, and it's going to affect you. Like, yeah.
And especially some games like D&D, I can understand combat can be really long. Sometimes, like, you should pay attention in combat, but also sometimes the person who goes right before you totally changes the landscape, so you're like, it doesn't even matter that I know
that I was paying attention.
It doesn't even matter. Like,
I
had this whole plan, and then you did the thing.
And now you're in the area of effect. So I understand sometimes there's like a little more like, okay, I'm gonna be kind of tuned in, but that's like a very D&D specific thing. Like other games, you really can't do that because you have to pay attention to what's going on. I feel like there's.
I do want to say one thing too. I kind of mentioned it before with like the DM, but in general, I think even if someone is being insanely rude, which again, this player is absolutely being, I think just like no matter how close you are, starting off on such a fiery like is not the start off point to have engaging and like mutual communication here. Like. I don't disagree with the DM. I understand that's probably super fucking frustrating, but like I just wouldn't start with that, like
little less likely to get your way.
Yeah, exactly. Like the second you get someone defensive, you're not going anywhere, right? And the second you start with it being like fuck you, which maybe that's what you feel, but don't say it. Don't take the time to say it. Just be like, hey, I want to talk to you about something that has frustrated me a little bit. Like have a conversation, not a scolding.
Yeah, for sure. I think that makes sense. Let's do another one. This is also from r/D&D. And I think this is a situation that a lot of people find themselves in, so it's interesting to see how people handle it. This one is titled How to Tell the DM Nicely That the Campaign is Not Fun.
Ooh. Yeah, that's a tricky one.
So, this is my first time playing D&D, and we've been playing for a bit more than a year, but I think the sessions are getting boring, and I don't know if maybe I'm not cut out for D&D. My DM doesn't really provide any information anytime we go anywhere to a new area. Our DM just asks what we want to do, and we don't even know what we're looking at, and it's like that always, and we go to new areas often. When we are, this is written in a very like stream of consciousness way. When we are on our way to those new areas, we will spend the whole 4-hour session doing literally nothing but hunting deer because there is nothing else to do. We've probably had more of these sessions than anything story related. I've even tried looking around for lore items by investigating and using other skills, but I literally got nothing useful. The player who probably has the most fun is probably the DM's partner, whose story is the most developed, and sometimes only they are given anything useful. Sometimes they'll literally talk for more than an hour with the DM in character while we just watch. My character barely has any interaction, which is boring, and I'm contemplating just letting my character die in the next session. The whole squad has been broke for practically most of the year, and anytime we try to shop, I can't even buy anything. We've tried to tell the DM that if more time is needed for planning, then that's fine, and they should take a break. But they said no, and last time I tried talking to them, they just said that my character doesn't try. So I asked them what I can do, and did what they told me, but they just said they forgot to add information regarding those things. I have talked with the other players, and they also feel similarly. So, so yeah, how do you tell someone that the game is boring? How do you leave a game if you're not having any fun? What are your thoughts on like the etiquette around that kind of thing?
I mean, do it if you can with kindness and some amount of compassion. Yeah, I mean that it's tough. This specific situation, I'm going to say this seems like the DM is doing a bad job.
It
Like
does seem that
we
way.
don't have the DM side of it, but like it sounds like the DM and their partner wanted to play a game together. Man, may I humbly suggest Tangled Blessings if you want to play an awesome 2-player game.
Yeah.
Which then you can be romantic rivals and like add some charge into your life if you want. I don't know. I'm making some assumptions. But I think there is and again, the thing that like they've already talked to the other players, and so my assumption here is that no one's having fun but the DM and their partner.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. And so I think one approach is for this person, maybe as a unified front with the other players who feel this way, to go, hi, we are all struggling. Here are some of the reasons why we're struggling, and we would like to have more fun, but we perceive that this is happening, that you and your partner are having fun and we're not.
Yeah.
And so how can we all work together to change this? Is I think the kindest approach. You know, the blunt approach is like, hey dude, you're playing a game with your partner that the rest of us are ancillary to, and that's not the game that we signed up to play.
We're hunting deer every session.
Dude, I mean, you can get away with that once. You can make hunting a really cool like mid-journey activity, but not multiple fucking sessions of it. Like,
Yeah.
No, thank you.
go,
More sessions than
DM,
anything
go
story
research.
related.
Yeah. Jeez. Yeah, so I guess that's where I'm at. Like this person and players present a unified front and deliver your I or we statements about why this thing is not fun anymore, and see if there is a solution that everyone can get behind together. Because being like, hey DM, this sucks and it's your problem and you have to fix it, is like kind of like starting a text exchange with fuck you, don't do that.
That's what I was gonna say they should do, is just start a message with their DM that just says fuck you.
Fuck you.
and to right, and to close it out, that's how you leave the game, of course. So,
yeah. First and last
you,
message.
and if you want to leave a game, again, use I statements. It's not, hey, you DM are making me leave the game because you're doing this. It's, in this case, hey man, I'm not really having fun, and we've already kind of tried to address this, and I feel like you're really focused on your partner's character, and that's, I guess, okay, but I don't want to play with that anymore, and so I'm going to go try to find another group.
Yeah.
Best I got. I've never had to leave a game before. I don't really. Yeah, or maybe it was like a scheduling thing. Or it was like, hey, I'm gonna be out for a month because I have rehearsal. But like,
Yeah,
that's rough. I think there's so many things, obviously, that depending on the situation, because again, we don't have all the details. We just have whatever's presented to us. It doesn't feel like in cases, if there's a newer DM or something, you know, like certain graces are given because it's like you're figuring this out, you're getting used to it. I understand that. So there
Mhm.
are certainly going to be some rough patches as you're going through it. But I don't know if I got the vibe that that was the case in this one. But absolutely, certainly the conversation needs to happen. If it's not a matter of this is new to them and they are just learning, and even so, the way that they seem to have any kind of conversation about it didn't seem very productive, in the sense that the player already described themselves as trying many things and then going to the DM and saying, okay, how can I try more? You know, like what can I do to make this better? Like they're already trying to put the best foot forward in this situation. And it sounds as though the DM was just like, I don't know, try this. And then they did and nothing happened. You know, like
That's
that
such a
sucks.
bummer for the player, for the DM to be like,
Yeah,
I forgot to put anything in for the thing I told you to
exactly,
do.
which kind of proves the other, like there was a moment in the story where they mentioned that the whole, like the table was like, if you need more time to prep, that's fine, like we can set it as a DM. If you hear that, I feel like I got shot. I need to go take a second. Like, God damn, I'm fucked up, you know, like the fact that like you have your whole table being like, if you need more time to make this better, like, we'll wait. It's fine. And
We
then
were
you're
hunting
just like,
deer for
nah,
4 hours.
we're good. Yeah. And then they roll on. And then, you know, like it's exactly like it proved that other story even more correct, right? Because it's like, okay, fine. So I will do what you asked me to, because apparently you're prepped enough for us to do this.
Mhm.
And then they openly admit that they did not prep for that. So it's just
Yeah.
like there's just so many messes that just kind of explain themselves in a way. And in this case, like I think like an unenthusiastic table is one of the biggest downers, right? Like if you
Mhm.
have a bunch of people who are like, I am not having a wonderful time. You can have one person who's having the goddamn time of their life, but that is not fun. You know, like that's such a
Yeah.
weird like energy to be around. I truly think for this, I don't even know if I would, like I think the kind of like intervention chat is necessary at this point, having everyone just be together and be like, okay, let me
Yeah.
just let you know how I
Yeah.
feel. And it's not to
Mhm.
be like, fuck you or I hate this and da 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 da. It's just to let you know, like, this is not, you know, suiting all of our needs and I'm not as excited, blah, blah, blah. I need to go find another table, whatever that might be. But just the coming
Yeah.
together of an understanding over why and what's going on. So at the very least, everyone present can have a moment to, you know, express and then possibly grow from this, as opposed to being
Mhm.
like, fuck you, this shit sucks, I'm out.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
like
Block
sit
on
down,
every
yeah,
platform.
have that likely uncomfortable conversation. And I don't know, I truly I don't feel like there's a way back from this. It really feels like this is just a time for us to be like, thank you for your time. I think this is not going to work out. You know, like we gotta go.
Yeah.
I mean, if this DM wants to completely redesign how they're running this game, which
Right.
debatably they should at least redesign the travel section, it sounds like.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, I mean, I want to go back, like if we're doing like a bit of DM advice for a moment, like if this DM never describes the scenario you're in and you always,
Yeah.
I'm remembering the very first time I ever led any sort of game, I was trying to do a one shot for like my housemates and people, and I just go, you're in a tavern.
Yeah. You're like,
And I wait for them to do something, you know, and then like, and there's a solid 30 seconds of silence before they're like, okay, what's in the tavern? Who's in the tavern? Are we sitting at a table? What are we doing? And I'm like, oh, yeah.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
and so this DM may need to, you know, start figuring out like how to give yourself a little bullet point of descriptives of like, okay, you are, whereas before you're saying you arrive in the town, what do you want to do? Now
Yeah.
you're saying you arrive in the small town of such and such, where there is a stable run by a dwarven person over there. And then you walk down and there's a main street and there's some houses and it looks like there's a couple shops and it's a mid-sized town. And then when your players say, cool, can we find a blacksmith? You go, yeah, roll for it. Or
Mhm.
yeah, it's right down the main street. Like, you
Yeah.
know, like this DM definitely needs to take the focus off their partner's character and maybe some other things. Like I will say
Mhm.
need in that case, and debatably should like look into, there's a million tutorials, a million like ways to improvise these things, and a million like, if you want to use AI to help you, use AI to help you. But like, if your players are constantly asking you, what's there? What do I see? What's happening? The problem might be with how you're describing the thing.
Get a module, run a module of something, and then you have it all written out. Yeah, I think it's pretty egregious for a DM to, a player says like, oh, what is this lore thing? And then it's one thing, sometimes you like forget to prep something, whatever, that happens. But to not even make something up in the moment or say like, oh, yeah, good question. Like, what are you looking for? Because a lot, and this is me as a DM too, I'm very collaborative when I'm DMing. So if I was in this situation and forgot to add information about something that I had told a player to do, which I guess maybe it could happen to me. Then if they asked about it in the moment, I would go, oh, I forgot you were going to look into that. Like, what are you hoping to find? And like open it up to the table of like, X, Y, and Z. Like, what are some other stuff that we think would be cool? Because you don't even, I mean, I prep a lot as a DM, but you don't have to. Like, you can, you can make stuff up. You can, there's all kinds of like, not even AI, but like people who do like dungeon generators, town generators, description generators, where they're like building
pay
stuff.
A human for the work that they've been doing instead of using AI for free. I should add that for sure. But like, also,
but there's so many
AI,
resources.
I don't know.
Yeah. There's so many resources that you can use. So I would say, like, I think if this person really wants to go above and beyond and they're really invested in this DM as a friend, they could, like, sit down and be like, hey, we're unionizing as players and we're presenting you our terms.
Oh, yeah.
But I think I would leave this game, to be honest. And, if you want to, you can say, like, hey, I'm just not really... I've talked to you about these things and it hasn't really improved. Or you can say, I don't have time for this game anymore. And just leave that way.
It's a big time commitment. You can always be like, yo, my life's changing. I got more stuff to do. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this DM does not sound like a fun game.
No.
Not the way it's being written about.
Yeah. The DM, anytime we go anywhere to a new area, our DM just asks what we want to do and doesn't, like, describe anything. And says you can hunt some deer. You don't have any money, you can't buy anything.
I mean, there's like a small but significant laundry list of things that could happen to this game to change it around, but does the DM want to do that work? And want to change the way that they're presenting the game.
Yeah.
The fact that they already had that interaction where they were asking how they could more like keep things moving in a way or like, get answers or anything like that. And that already turned out to, be fruitless is the main reason why I'm like, there has been an attempt and this DM doesn't seem to either one, want to meet them halfway, or two, recognize that maybe something on their end needs to change, not on the player's end. Yeah. And that was the main reason why I was like, I think it's time to say goodbye. Just have a conversation and be nice.
Just leave.
But like it's
but
not,
I'm done
it's
with
just,
this.
you have to try and meet each other. And it doesn't sound like they are. So you gotta go.
And it's possible maybe this DM is doing the best they can. Some people are not good at DMing. Unfortunately. And it's a skill you can get better at, but sometimes people are operating at
as a side note, I want you to send me the link to this so I can be like, yo, just tell your DM to play Tangled Blessings with her partner and play D&D with everybody.
Yeah. Don't play D&D anymore.
I played it with my partner. We were in Alaska with like no internet or phones or anything, and we played it in Alaska. It was amazing. It's a great game to play with your partner. More plugs for Tangled Blessings by Cassie Mothman.
And put a link in the chat.
Yeah. And they're making an expansion. Sebastian Yue is working on the expansion, and it's going to be awesome. So go get it.
There's an expansion coming out.
Cool.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, very exciting.
On that robust endorsement for Tangle Blessings, I think we're about an hour in, so I think it's a good time to take our break. So when we come back from break, we will have some more stories. As a teaser, we've got a DM asking about how to handle a player who always says, I would have done XYZ. I would have done that.
Let me just
We
give
have
you the
one.
facial reaction.
Yeah. We have one DM not allowing creativity. We have an accusation of railroading. We have an extremely rude one shot, and also a first time D&D player who
One shot was rude, or
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
What is
start
that?
to finish, it's
Amazing.
everyone being rude to each other one shot.
It's a rude one shot.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and then a player asking about how to handle rules corrections at the table when they know that something's not being run, rules is written.
Woof.
So those are some things. Hopefully we'll get to all of them, but if not, they'll be in future episodes. But yeah, we're gonna take a quick break, so we'll be back in like 3 to 5 minutes, and we'll see you then. Bye. Hello, welcome to the second half of this episode of Over the Table, where we are talking about table manners. Before we get back into the stories, I do want to do quick shout outs for follows. So, AC Lawrence, thank you so much for the follow. Answer Make My Day, thank you for the follow. If you're still hanging around here, appreciate the follows. And then also, I was very remiss not to mention this, but Mila redeemed first at the beginning of the stream. So, Mila, canonically first in chat. I always have to state that, and I forgot to when you first started. But with that, I think we can get into our next story. This one is from r/RPG, and the title for this is How Do You Handle the I Would Have Done That player? Longtime DM, I have a group with a player who's very prone to retcon actions, where they complain that their character would have already had their weapon drawn, or would know not to leave home without a torch. I attempted to incorporate these retcons into the game using flashbacks in the style of Blades in the Dark, but they were quickly abused to absurd effect. I implemented a currency that could be spent on flashbacks or re-rolls or whatever, sort of like inspiration or hero points, but found that the complaining started up again as soon as the currency ran out. I get that some players are keen to play out the competence fantasy where their heroes are always on top of things, and for some games, I'm actually okay with it. But even for those games, I feel at times that the amount of backpedaling and I would have takes some of the narrative tension away. This particular player is very reluctant to find themselves unprepared or taken completely off guard by a situation. Worse, if I outline, if you don't tell me about it before I describe what's next, then we'll have to work with what you did declare rule, I will often hear complaints along the lines of, you didn't give me a chance to say it. How do you adjudicate this type of thing? Are you strict about what a player is holding and carrying, or do you allow wiggle room? Have you dealt with a player who abuses that wiggle room? Thoughts? It sounds like they're playing D&D, but this is in r/RPG, so they might be playing a different, like, fantasy heartbreaker game. Yeah, something else.
And it's from like one player. It's not the whole
Sounds like
table
it's from one player. Yeah.
primarily, yeah.
I mean, both as a player and as a DM, I think D&D does have rules about actions or bonus actions to draw and stow weapons or to load a longbow with an arrow and things like that. And I, quite frankly, hand wave a lot of that because I don't think it's very important.
Yeah.
It's
some
also
people
not
do.
fun.
I don't think it's
fun.
It does make sort of action economy resource management a little more true to life, and I can respect it if a DM is coming from that point. However, I mean, in this case, it sounds like the player is trying to abuse the systems that the DM is putting in place to be like, okay, sure, you have in fact drawn your weapon, and I'm not going to make you do a thing.
Yeah.
But this player seems determined to never be caught by surprise and to always retcon actions it sounds like in a lot of contexts. And at a certain point I have to wonder if that's fun for the rest of the table too.
Yeah.
And I think if I had this player at my table, I might try to pull them aside after a game and kind of go, hey, I don't feel like this is actually serving the game. and I want to know why it is so important to you.
Mm-hmm.
And if they have a really good reason, you know, which
What
I can't think
exists?
of at the moment,
Yeah.
like maybe the response is like, okay, please try to deploy this when it is really, really necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And or just like surprise them when they're sleeping. Just be like, no, you can't no one has a weapon
You
of
were
warning.
asleep.
You were asleep. You have to wake up and find your weapon, and you know you weren't
Mm.
sleeping in your plate armor.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That, I mean, that's the like slightly petty clown side of me that wants to go like just really catch this person in a situation where
Be
they would
surprised.
not be prepared,
Yeah.
and don't allow any sort of flashback or retconning.
Mm-hmm.
I think, again, as per usual, a lot of it comes down to talking.
Yeah.
But in general, I think I've had kind of specific moments with some of my past players and even some of the ones that I have now where we've kind of set something up where they're like, hey, if I'm going to talk to this person and I know I'm going to,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to remember to bring that coin, or like I'm going to,
Oh,
so like
yeah, yeah,
in the
yeah.
future, if they're like, oh, did I, like I want to bring this coin, I'm like, did you? And then we can be like, we already established that your character knows this. So like that
Yeah.
kind of stuff I'm fine with, because it's like we know, obviously, like we aren't our characters as much as we try to be them. So like, what's pertinent to them in that moment, they're gonna remember and we might not.
Yeah,
So like
for
those kinds
sure.
of things I'm fine with, especially if it's talked about previously. Or if
Yeah.
there's a moment where you're like, from this moment on, I want my character to keep this in mind. I might
Mm-hmm.
forget, but I want my character to know that. So if that's established,
Yeah.
you're good. But obviously that's not the case with this person. And I think in general, like I think my conversation wouldn't even, like, as terrible as it might sound, I don't even know if I would be like, why do you feel this way? So much as I would say, like, unfortunately, I think in a game like this, and just like in this act of storytelling, you need to be comfortable with being on your back foot sometimes and
Yeah.
being creative in that as well. Because I think, it sounds like it's a control thing where they just want to make sure they're in control of everything. And in
Mm-hmm.
general, like that is just going to seep into other issues with your gameplay as well. So if you're trying to kind of like nip that in the bud and be like, be comfortable with, unfortunately, being uncomfortable a little bit. Obviously, this is not like I don't want to push, like we were kind of talking about this before, like lines and veils obviously are a different thing.
Right.
There's a level of being uncomfortable that I think if everyone's agreed to, it's okay. And in this situation, the discomfort is just the idea that you're not Batman and you can't fucking just pull some shark repellent out of your pocket. So like,
you're not always ready.
Right. So like be comfortable with you or your character being like, and like that will probably take some time if they're open to even thinking that way, because that's probably hard. That's a difficult mindset to drop. But yeah, I think in general, it's not even a matter of like, you just need to just be cool with this or not. Like, unfortunately, like that. This is going to keep coming up, and I think the DM met them halfway in many different ways. They got that fucking like system involved, and they were
the
talking
flashbacks.
about like, the flashbacks. Like they tried numerous things, and like clearly it was still about the control. And if that is the issue, that's what needs to be tackled in that sense. And unfortunately, I think it just needs to be a matter of like, you gotta get comfortable with this, like I'm not, and also make it clear that it's like I'm not trying to like, ha, gotcha, fuck you, or again, it's just that like, and a lot of times if a character or a player has trouble with something like this, I tend to kind of relate it to their real life, right, where it's just like you are probably the best data whatever in the world, right? You're so good at your job, but maybe once you forgot a bracket and it fucked some shit up, right? Like you know what you're doing, but there's the chance for mistakes. It's the same in this, like it's just sometimes that's how it'll go, and just be comfortable with it.
Yeah, for sure. I think I, as a DM, because I really don't enjoy not even like shopping stuff, but I really don't enjoy like in a game where it's like 2 hours of hey, I have to have this and I want to get this and I want to set up this and this is the plan, we all have to be on this, like that, it kind of, I hate that. It makes me so
2
impatient.
hours.
Yeah, so which D&D I think is especially guilty of, because you have inventory, you have all these items. So for me as a DM, I will tell my players, like, if we get in a situation and you think your character would have had this thing, like this item, like, I would rather have that than have everyone spend an hour going like, and I have to make sure I have torches and I have rations and I have like, I would rather just be like, you're an adventurer, you probably have it, you know.
You got your shit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Everybody
yeah,
has
because
50 feet of rope, always.
right, exactly. Because there are some DMs that do take kind of a perverse pleasure in being like, oh, you don't have a fork to eat your dinner with. You didn't say. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but it doesn't sound like this is that DM because they have the whole like flashback thing, but
Yeah, no,
I
they
can
really
understand someone
tried.
having, yeah. Someone
Yeah.
having almost a trauma response of like, I've been in a game before and the DM was like really, you know, harsh about stuff. So, but yeah.
Well,
I think
I mean,
talking
I
to
think
the player. Oh, go ahead.
well, I think it's important to remember that, like, in most games, shouldn't say in any or every game, it's not in fact DM or GM versus players.
Yeah.
Everybody's playing together.
Yeah,
You know,
for
unless
sure.
you have what I will in fact say is a bad DM who's out to get you, as you described. Like,
Yeah.
and then I'm gonna ask who's having fun there besides the DM,
Yeah.
in which case, you know,
Yeah.
yeah,
Or
yeah,
the other way around, where the players are consistently trying to, you know, downplay what the DM
sure,
is doing, or being like,
Yeah.
"Ha, fuck
yeah,
you! I shot you in the middle of your monologue," and whatever. You know, like, yeah,
Right.
like obviously on both sides, there needs to
yeah.
be, you know,
Yeah.
respect given.
I
You know,
think
my
so.
parents recently asked me, how do you win D&D? Uh, I've been telling them a little bit about D&D and other RPGs, and so my mom was really like, so how do you win? And I was just like, well, that's the wrong question, but I'm going to say you win when everyone's having a good time.
Yeah.
That's how you
Hey,
win.
that's
Like,
For
it. That's it.
sure.
that's how you win telling a story together, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Nailed it.
think the last thing I'll mention of this is just a shout out to another system, which is Mouse Rider has a really fun inventory system that makes it, you do have to be really like, I don't know, like ticky tack about like, this is what I'm holding, this is what's in my bag. But you have like a little character sheet and little squares, like little cardboard squares that you put into the slots. So I think for a game like that,
Cool.
that's super fun. I don't think
That is
inventory
cute, yeah.
management in D&D is very fun. So I'm like,
No.
let's not worry about it. You can have whatever you
If
want.
you enjoy that and that's your thing and you have a DM that wants to do that, great. Awesome, because D&D is built so you can play that way if you want
Yeah.
to, but
You can.
you shouldn't have to.
Yeah.
I think also
for
just
sure.
like the idea that okay, sure, you could probably have a player and a DM who's into that. I really doubt the other four people at the table are real excited about you guys playing inventory time. And also, like, again, whatever you guys enjoy, like, please enjoy it. This is not me shitting on anyone who does enjoy it. Like, by all means, please
But
have a great time.
Few and far
But
between, I think.
the whole table's got to opt into it, and this is
Yeah.
what I would
Exactly,
call,
yeah.
you know, managed expectations at the start of your game. If you're the DM, say, I like to be really crunchy about details
Yes.
and how many arrows you have in your inventory and whether or not you have torches if you can't see in the dark. And if your
Mhm.
player's like, great, we like doing that, then it's cool. And if you don't like
Yeah.
doing that, you can probably find a table that doesn't want to do that.
Yeah, pretty easily, I
Comes
think.
down to talking to everybody.
Crushing it.
The through
Crushing it.
line. The through line.
Yo.
Okay, I'll do this one next since you both seemed pretty interested in it. This one, it was cross-posted, so it's the person posted it in r/D&D and r/D&D next, which I think D&D next has like a overall like advice and like talking about D&D
Okay.
subreddit as well. And the title for this one is My Players Were Rude to Me. Am I Holding an Unfair Grudge? This is the rude one shot.
Mhm.
Okay.
So, A couple of weeks ago, I ran a homebrew one-shot for my usual group. It's an out there idea. They play as fast food workers transported to a fantasy world by an evil wizard. I was very forward about what the setting would be. I asked them to start as humans, and transportation to the magic world would allow them to become fantasy races. They all understood and seemed okay with it. Again, the initial was out there, but I didn't think it would be a major issue for anybody. Turns out I was wrong. I felt it had potential to be very fun, but it did not go that way. The entire session, almost all of my players were scrolling their phones, having whole conversations while I'm talking, or when they were throwing stuff at each other, or playing hand games, which I don't really know what that is. I would have to wait minutes at a time for them to stop. If I said or did anything to get them to stop, I would get their attention for a few minutes before they were right back to it. Basically, not paying attention at all. When they did pay attention, they would kill every NPC they came across. I don't understand this reaction because the usual DM, who is one of the players in this one-shot, arguably behaving worst of all, has not gotten this treatment ever. Everyone is attentive and listening and participating. I thought maybe it was a problem with my DMing. This isn't the first time it's happened to me, after all. Some of the players are from an old group where this happened as well. So I asked them what I was doing wrong that made them act this way. Turns out they just didn't like the general setup of my story, so they decided they weren't interested. This was a couple of weeks ago, and it's still very fresh and upsetting because every time I try to talk to them about it, I get told to drop it or to move on. I often get called a baby as well. They tell me because it was a one-shot that it gave them reason to act however they wanted to, which I disagree. I feel very undervalued as a DM and as an individual as well. Am I overreacting? Any feedback or comments would be greatly appreciated. Thank you if you read this far.
No.
Get
You're
better
not overreacting.
friends.
Yeah, you have not
They
found your
actually-
people.
Yeah, that sounds like that is extremely rude. Wow.
I will say, I did look through the comments of this one a little bit. The OP, the person who posted this, said that everyone in this group is between 17 and 18, which I was like, okay.
That makes
I
sense.
was gonna say, are we in high school? Like, this sounded so
Yeah.
like, oh my god, Becky's running a game and we all hate her. So let's go. Let's just like ruin a day.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
not pay attention at all. It's gonna be fun.
Let's play
For
hand
us.
games. I don't know what that is.
Yeah. Well, you're gonna get better friends later in life. High school friends, by and large, suck. And high school kind of sucks.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's just god awful friends, right? Like that's
Yeah.
I think
Especially because they do it to this person. They don't do it to the other DM, which is like...
and knowing that the DM was perhaps the worst as described is insane to me, because I think the second you're a DM, it makes me feel like you, as soon as you're a player again, you're like, I let me try and help this situation as much as I can, because I know what it's like being on the other side, and I know what my fears would be, and I know I want everyone to enjoy, and just coming in with all that knowledge and being like, nah, fuck them. Like, damn, what the shit?
Yeah.
Is this,
Oh,
if this
God.
DM was going to address the players about this, would this be an appropriate time for the message to start with "fuck you"?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I don't know. Hopefully they're not. If they gotta finish senior year of high school together or something, maybe the fuck you comes at the end of the year. I don't
You
know.
sign the yearbook.
Yeah.
Just says,
Yeah.
fuck you.
PT dubs, fuck you.
Oh, man.
Have a bad summer.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be incredible if public schools or high schools taught how to communicate and empathize with each other instead of rote
Yeah.
memorization of facts? Who knows? It certainly hasn't been tried yet.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah, I feel very bad for that person. That super sucks, and those people
Yeah.
are being incredibly rude for no reason. And like, I really hope adults wouldn't do this, but just because someone's running a one shot doesn't mean you can do whatever you want. And
That
if you
logic
I would
is
say-
crazy.
I would say it's
If you
less
don't like-
likely in a one shot that you can
Yeah.
do whatever you want, because you are kind of more on the rails in a one shot than you are for a campaign.
yeah. And if you don't like their setup, tell them before the thing.
Don't
Don't
play.
decide where don't play. Just be like, or if this is the regular group and everybody's been playing together for a while and the DM needs a break and you don't like the pitched one shot, say, hey, maybe not that. How about something else? Or volunteer to run it yourself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Get out of there.
Have you-
The
Wow.
message is get out.
Get out
Yeah.
while you can from that
Jeez.
friend group. I think
man.
it's on none other D&D podcast, Brian Murphy sometimes will say like, you need new friends. This is more
Yeah.
that like when they talk about some stories, they're like, this is not even a D&D problem. You have bad
No.
friends, you need new friends, never play with them again. I
Yes.
think that's this
That
situation.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Get better friends. It
Try
it
again
does.
in
Your
college.
friends do, in fact, generally, I think, tend to improve as you get older as well.
Yeah.
I do think
Hopefully.
so. Yeah.
Yeah. Have either of you had a situation where you've felt like very disrespected, either as a player or as a DM at the table, where like have had to handle something like that? Hopefully
Not by a
no.
whole table. Like, god damn.
The
Like,
whole
the whole
table
Yeah.
throwing things at
I'd
you.
leave. I'd be like, all right, well, I'm gonna go. Jeez. I've had like one or two players where it did feel like, you know, I'm putting out some effort and you are not meeting me halfway, whatever that might be. Nothing this egregious though. Nothing just like I just don't give a shit. I actively don't give a shit. I'm here to make sure you have a bad time. That
Yeah.
is insane.
That's
But-
nuts.
Yeah.
I think I've been very fortunate that the worst I've really had to deal with as a DM is extremely clever players, including neurospicy children that try to break the game because they know the rules really well.
Yeah.
And sometimes just having to be like, no, I'm sorry, I can't. I want to let you roll for that because I love Rule of Cool, but no, that will actually not be for me. Sorry.
Yeah.
Or players who just like occasionally do something completely unexpected that did not tie into the narrative that I was thinking about for that particular session or even that particular arc of our larger game, and I have to go like, okay, give me a minute to figure out how to get past the obstacle that you have just placed in front of me.
Yeah.
Which I think is playing with great creative players is like that's kind of a fun-ish side.
Yeah.
Ish.
Yeah.
Fun-ish.
If you can like really force yourself as a DM to look at that as fun, it becomes fun. And about 85% of the time it remains fun to me, and then that 15% I'm just like, god damn it. Okay, give me 5 minutes.
That actually is kind of a perfect segue into one of these other stories. So I think that the rude one shot was so egregious. I don't know if there's that much we can say other than
So
like
funny.
Get better friends.
that
Yeah.
sucks.
We feel for you. Get better
I'm
friends.
so sorry. Yeah. God.
This next one is also from r/D&D, and the title is "Player Argues with My Rulings, Says I'm Not Letting Them Be Creative." So you can see how this ties in with what you were just saying. And this one's a little bit longer because they're talking about specific rules stuff. I might skip around a little bit. But they said, "Hey there, I need advice regarding a particular player and a short fallout that has formed. While this player has for the most part been fun to play with, there has been issues where they will argue with rulings I implement. These occur when the player attempts to play a spell or ability outside the realm of the rules, and I have to rule on the fly as to if it works or not. This involves me rushing to the rulebook to read through the spell description, try to understand it, and quickly deliberate if what they're attempting should be allowed. There have been a few times where I've waived the restrictions where I see no harm in allowing it. However, in cases where I ruled that their misinterpretation of the rules would be too much of a game breaker for me to allow, they've thrown a temper tantrum and started arguing with me. One of the examples they give is they used the spell Daylight on a group and said that the group should be blind from the Daylight spell because there was like, they basically like a flashbang. Another example, they wanted to use the spell Control Water. The party was stationed at some docks looking to infiltrate a pirate crew. As the session ended, the players said that they had a plan but wouldn't reveal it. I asked them to run it by me so that I can understand it, but they refused. I took the time between sessions to look at his spell list and see what he might be trying to plan. I guessed correctly that he wanted to use control water to part the sea and send the gargantuan pirate ship crashing to the ocean floor. I reached out and explained to him that the spell wouldn't allow you to one-shot the ship, but maybe we could work out an interesting way for you to use the spell. He started arguing with me on this. And then the last example is that led to the player storming out of the session was a holiday one-shot. The player had Eldritch Blast prepared, as well as a Repelling Blast invocation. Combat began, and the player used Eldritch Blast to repel a combatant away. The problem was when they argued that they repelled them 20 feet up in the air, causing them to fall prone and take fall damage. I was confused by this and tried to look it up. From my understanding, Eldritch Blast sends the target away on the horizontal axis, not vertical. There's no indication of fall damage from the spell. I tried to explain my logic to them, but they wouldn't listen to me. Yeah, I guess if you're laying underneath an enemy combatant and cast it,
or like you're on the street level and someone's like on a rooftop.
Then you could do it. Yeah,
doesn't it only repel 10 feet anyway?
I thought it was 10 or 15.
Anyway,
yeah,
not the point.
Yeah. So okay. The person walked out. They've now reached out to me via text to explain their feelings on the matter. They write, this is the player putting forth their lawyerly statement. By restricting creative use of spells or abilities within rules as written, you are invalidating player choices and telling us players to not think outside the box when problem solving. That standard combat where all we do is use basic attacks and nothing else is the only way to solve issues. I feel that when making rulings for when spells or abilities are used in surprising ways or ways that catch you off guard, you harshly shut them down without a second thought. I fear that you are very eager to swing the ban hammer without considering its effects on the game and players. Personally, I believe this to be the wrong approach when DMing, and that a DM should be encouraging the players to make creative choices. While I agree that in most cases a DM should get the final say about things, I also believe that if they don't have an open mind and aren't willing to have an open discussion with their players, they discourage their players' creativity, which harms the overall experience for all parties by making the game feel bland. And then basically the DM just is like, what should I do about this? what advice do people have?
Okay.
Wow.
So there you go.
I mean, I am all for creative gameplay, but in this case, I think the DM has correctly onto the rule book and see that I think what this player is trying to do without looking at the exact details of those spells is against rules in a way that I mean, yeah, I think they have done the right thing. And it sounds like they have been willing to talk about it and to hear this player's logic. And this player's logic, to me, does not seem sound. I don't know that I know how to put it.
I think the other kind of difficult part of this, and this is also the conversation stuff that always comes up, like regardless of however things come up, whether that's like spur of the moment or you talked about it with the DM before and blah, 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 the DM's call is the DM's call. And you unfortunately need to essentially get over that or get out of there. You know, like you either need to like come to terms with it or realize that you're never going to see eye to eye. And I think that's part of the reason, like, sometimes this can get really frustrating because, like, the DM is what, like, the more or less structure of the story that is happening. So, you know, depending on how things go, and obviously you can argue your point. I don't mind that if you're like, well, what if this because blah, 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 like, you know, save your piece and that's fine. But at the end of the day, it is the DM's say. So if there's so much frustration that's happening every time, then that is a real issue of compatibility there that should be handled at some point, because yikes. And also, like, it's insane that, like, I mean, part of the reason I love, like, D&D or just, like, in general games for whatever reason it might be, is that, yeah, you get certain tools and you get certain rules, but you can be creative within that. Like, the creativity isn't necessarily based off of what you would love to have happen, but instead being like, yeah, you gave me a wrench and 2 sticks, but I built a house with this bitch, you know, like using only those. It's awesome, as opposed to being like, oh, I'm a wizard and I just summoned a mansion. You know, like it's so much cooler if you can be creative with the restrictions and the tools that you have. And this is also like me personally, and part of the reason I love D&D so much is seeing how creative people can be while still maintaining. And of course, like you can pull up the rules and just be like, okay, let's just make sure that's sound and whatever. And obviously it sounds like this DM is also being flexible, where they were like, okay, there were times where this did seem cool or fun or appropriate or whatever it might be. And like, you need to strike a balance, I think, in general, and I'll obviously make sure that your table is cool with whatever that might be. But it really just, it sounds almost like the other situation where it's like, it's about the control, right? Where that player just wants to have control over certain things and be like, I'm the coolest.
Yeah.
Don't take this away from me. Which is, again, why it's like, you gotta talk to them about that. And just, you know, from a point of understand, I'm not making these rulings to ruin your day. I'm trying to make sure that this story progresses in a way that makes sense and that feels right. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious how the rest of the players at this DM's table feel, and if other people are like, hey, can I do this thing that is not strictly speaking within the rules, or is not strictly this spell description, but is not going to kind of break the game in this way? And the DM's like, yeah, or sure, roll for it. Roll your spell casting ability to do that weird thing with the spell that's not actually what it's for, you know? Because if the other players are having a great time and it's only this one player who keeps trying to stretch the boundaries of the magic their character has as far as possible, then maybe that player ought to find a different table.
Or a different game. Like, I think...
Or a different game.
Like, it's... In D&D... You don't really want any of your players to be able to use one spell to completely one-shot an entire encounter, which is what it sounds like this player is kind of wanting to do. They want to, like, okay, I'm going to use one spell, I'm going to flashbang all of the enemy combatants, and then they'll all be blinded, which is going to give us like a really significant advantage. Or I'm going to use control water, which I think is like a 2nd or 3rd level spell. It's not that high of a level spell.
Low level,
It's not.
And like sink a pirate ship.
It's like fucking sea is insane.
Yeah, especially because I think there are high-level spells that do that. Like, there are spells that are create a whirlpool, but even those are like this much water, this many gallons of water. This, like, even that, I don't think you could for sure sink a ship and, like, you know, with one spell. It's kind of hard to do. And, like, Colin, like you said, with the other players, I've definitely been at tables before where, maybe like one of the players doesn't know their spells that well and the DM's like a little more loosey-goosey. And sometimes it ends up feeling like that player who doesn't really know how to play the game ends up just steamrolling everything. And then everyone else at the table is like, okay, well, I'm not twisting my spells to be 9th level, so I can't really do anything cool. I think it can be a problem for the whole table.
Yeah. Yeah,
I fully agree. It just feels like this person. Also, like in the message that was written to the DM, it sounded so victimizing. Where like the second it began, it was like, you are supposed to flourish me and my dreams, and it's like, could you just like calm down for a second?
All about what I want to do here.
Exactly. Like the second the letter started,
you're stifling my creativity.
Yeah, I was out. Like the first line, I was like, "Oh, spare me! I cannot do this."
That could have been my line delivery as well. I was reading it a little bit like a shithead.
No, like word for word. Just.
There's way better ways to approach it. If you feel like your DM is sticking to rules as written too much, there's way better ways to approach it than that.
You're swinging the ban hammer without a thought.
It's a little bit like, it's almost like starting a text by saying, fuck you, don't do that.
gonna start all
Again,
my
I
texts
do
like
wonder
that
what
now.
the ages of these people are too, right? Because like this
Yeah.
does
Yeah.
feel kind of like a younger individual.
Grown humans are fully capable of acting like teenagers a lot of the
course.
time. I
Atrocities.
don't want to assume, but it does kind of sound like this a bit teenage-ish again.
Yeah.
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 Which again can absolutely be an adult, but like the mentality behind it is
Yeah.
nuts.
Yeah.
Childish. Yeah.
Man.
I
Yeah.
think we have time for one more story. I'll let you two decide which one you want me to do, because I have two left.
Okay.
One of them
Okay.
is a DM accused of railroading. Another one is the first time D&D player trying to figure out what to do when the rules aren't followed. So what are you two feeling?
I'm fine with either. I think the railroady conversation might be a 45-minute chat. Because I think there are like, I don't know. It's everything is so nuanced with that, because like so many things are dependent on the story, who's there, the expectation, everything about it. So I think the other one might be an easier, like, quick conversation.
Yeah, I agree. I think railroading, briefly in one shots, manage expectations. Again, if you're on a railroad, you're sometimes you are literally on a railroad. I have a great train heist one shot, but you are literally, you get on the train is on the tracks, and you have until the end of our time together
Exactly.
to rob
and guess
the train or whatever.
The cabins go in a straight line as well, so you
Yeah.
you just gotta.
Yeah.
And it's
You
also,
can
like,
go on top of it, you can be inside it. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's also like what people define as railroading, because that's
Yeah.
all over the charts as well. Yeah. So anyway, railroading.
I feel like I should just read the railroading one. based on we're already into it a little bit. It's a pretty short post, and I think you'll get a kick out of it. So let's go with the railroading one, because we've talked about the concept of railroading a little bit. This is from r/DM Academy, which is people can submit to this subreddit like stuff that they're like as DMs trying to figure out, or like looking for advice, different stuff like that. The title for this one is just got told my players don't want to go to a place I've been setting up for 4 sessions. What should I say? I run an online game about a group of hirelings. One player is playing a porcelain warforged who had a royal past in a distant country. For the last 4 sessions, I've been setting up potential plot threads and characters they will see in said countries, and set up the country's position of the world. I also have my magic shops in the world operate a travel system that will allow the players to teleport the players to other magic shops for a small fee. Near the end of the last session, the players asked to be teleported to a random country so they could look for more work. I was about to tell them they ended up in the country I listed earlier before I got a Discord text from 2 players saying, "Can we not be teleported to country," the one that was set up. "I feel like you're trying to force us to go there." I was dumbfounded. Like, the players have been picking up some of the plot threads and seemed very interested to see what the country is. Even the 2 players who messaged me were interested. However, for some reason, they don't understand that me setting up plot points in a country isn't forcing them. I'm confused.
This is a loaded one, which is what I was worried about.
Wow.
And I feel like it's loaded because I feel like I need way more information, and I don't have enough to have a solid idea. Because I can't tell if they don't want to go to that place because they think they're being railroaded and they'd rather just fuck around. If it's that, then I think that's different than if they're just like, don't tell us what to do, which is also weird, because if you're like, I want to go to a random place, like
a random country,
where you're going. So it's weird that they're like, we're gonna put the control in your hands, but not all of it. So like, what is going on?
And you know, over the length of a campaign, I think railroading means something very different. To me, this doesn't sound like railroading. This sounds like you have a whole country to explore that has multiple dangling plot threads.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that you want to go
your,
to.
Your DM sounds like they're doing kind of a good job, and y'all were excited about the plot threads that are in this place. So
Yeah.
that doesn't sound like railroading. That sounds like the story your DM is telling is going to take you to this place next. And y'all have been on board and up until this point for some particular reason.
I'm reading this
Perfectly
book
said,
and I
think.
feel like it's just leading to this country that the plot is going to happen, but what if I don't want to read about
maybe
that?
Maybe if I skip 100 pages, we'll just be in another country and I'll go back and read it later.
Also, again, unless they're like, yo, this country is literally in the middle of in the 17th level of hell right now, like, just you getting there doesn't mean shit's popping off or whatever, right? Like, there will likely be more plot hooks or more things for you to engage in. Again, I don't know this DM style, so maybe that's not the case, but I'm assuming that just being in the area doesn't mean, hey, the king is just waiting for you at the magic shop and is like, we need to talk. Let's sit down and bang this out now. You know, like I don't know. It feels so weird. That's why I'm like, I feel like I need more information.
The players sound like they want to go get more work. It sounds like there's more work in this country. That is probably I'm gonna go, need more information. I would assume, I would imagine a medium to large size country with varied terrain and interesting things to do that your DM has provided you. That's the country they've set up. Like,
no, I want to go to a country that you haven't prepped anything and we don't know anything about and there's no story.
You know, the DM could just change the name of the country but keep everything else exactly the same, and the players would not know any better. So,
truly,
DM, you could just do that. You could just kind of pull one over and be like, yeah, sure, you teleport to this other country that I'm going to make up a new name for, but all of the stuff that I prepped is, in fact, right there.
The sister country of where this person's from.
But yeah, I think there's some larger context that I think the post lacks. I agree. I just to really have more strong opinions. I need more information. But it doesn't sound like railroading. It sounds like it sounds like the story. It sounds like that's what's up in this campaign. You're going to this country, and I again, if the players have been excited about it until now, I'm confused if there's something else going on for those two players.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, that I think is a good place for us to wrap up. So before we completely leave, I'll throw it over to each of you to let people know where else they can find you, what other projects you have going on, all of that good kind of stuff. And we'll start with Colin.
Thank you. I like I said, I am the GM and creative director of the Roll Report, ROLL. You can find us where you find many of your fine podcasts. And that's where you can mostly find me. If you're in the Bay Area, you're gonna find me on several different stages next year. But you can I don't know, follow the Roll Report on social media, and we'll probably have some sort of announcement about it.
Yeah, all those links. Well, I should say the link to your link tree is in chat right now, so so people can click that link.
That has all the things,
and then see all your other links. Cool. Foos, what about you?
I'm pretty much mostly on Twitch. I just basically make my friends play games with me, and it's a good time. But no, we have a lot of short series plans in the near future. Especially for next year, might be like super experimental for us, but we're just having a really good time getting to meet new people and play games with them as well. I DM a bunch, I'm a player in a bunch. I'm pretty much involved in all of them because I accidentally started streaming and it had my name on it, so now it's just me, and it's not because it's us, but you know, anyway. It's a really good time, and I really wanted to thank Felicity for shooting the invite for this over and putting this together, because this was a blast.
Yeah, I'm so glad you could both be here. This was super fun. I will say the next Over the Table is going to be the end of November. I think I have a date for it. November 30th. So for people watching, if you like this, I do these about once a month with different themes. And then if you like TTRPGs, on a week from today, on the 12th, I am doing a one-shot of a Homestuck themed TTRPG called Egress, which I said if I hit
Ooh.
my funding goal for the PCRF, I did a fundraiser a while ago. I was like, if we get $100, I'll do a Homestuck one shot as a joke, and then we hit the goal. So now I have to
Perfect.
do a
Love
Homestuck
that.
one shot. So I have that coming up, and then you can also follow me on my socials everywhere, which are in chat right now. But I think that's going to do it for us. So do you two want to say goodbye to the chat and goodbye to the YouTube pod?
Oh, I love saying goodbye to bots. We love our bots. Thank you, everyone watching. Thank you, chat. Thank you for having me. It has been such a pleasure to hang out with both of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, likewise.
See y'all. Bye.
Have a happy Saturday.